Welcome. I'm going to jump in with our call to worship. So this is an unusual piece that I've got for us today. I found it on a UCC website. It's called The Living Psalms. And the stuff that's in italic that you'll read, that I will say out loud, are the Psalms rewritten from the perspective of marginalized people and those who act in solidarity. Okay, so I'm going to say the words in italics and you're invited to join in the bold. It's something, isn't it, to imagine being known so thoroughly that the pain you hold is understood without you having to say a single word, without you having to testify about your decision from last year or 10 years ago or yesterday, when you said the thing that led to the other thing that brought you so low you thought you'd never be known for more than the pain that crystallized around your hopes and your heart. Before a word is on my tongue, God, you have known its meaning through and through. It's something, isn't it, to believe in one who isn't afraid of your broken parts, or ugly deeds, or the cowardice, or the fear, or the anger, or the 100 other ways you have tried to make yourself disappear. When you felt unworthy of a great and abiding love, and had persuaded yourself that forgiveness was beyond reach, and grace an undeserved gift. You created me and shaped me. You gave me life within my mother's womb. It's something, isn't it, to be loved by God, to be both fearfully and wonderfully made, just as you are, not happier, not a work in progress, or with fewer secrets or scars, but just you as you are. Welcome at the table. Safe in your hands, all creation is made new. Amen. So today we're going to jump into the new year by doing some ritual around cleansing the mirror of our hearts. So I'm going to open with some readings. The first one is very short, Matthew 15. You are the light of the world. And friends, how we live our lives, the quality of our heart is our biggest act of prayer, because that's how we're holding the light of the world that we've been given. And the second one is similar. It's from Rumi. Rumi wrote, "Stop acting so small. Don't you know who you are? You are a manuscript of a divine letter. You are a mirror reflecting a noble face. The universe is not outside of you." The universe is not outside of you. When we take away all that is wrong, all the regrets, the mistakes, the griefs that blot out the sun, we can stand in humility and find a beautiful place of prayer and peace. But unfortunately, you have to do your shadow work. You have to do your confession. You have to take a really honest look at yourself. But we have to do that, because otherwise we'll just act small and we won't share the fact that we have the light of the world within us. I'm going to sing about that now. And I think I've done it again. Nope, there it is. Oh, this is a Sufi chant. Rumi was a Sufi poet, so I want to back that up with this beautiful song that is about a Sufi practice of polishing the mirror of the heart. The idea is that through prayer and spiritual practice, whatever that is, whether that's working at a food bank or being accountable for your white privilege, whatever that work is, whether it's internal or external, that polishes the mirror that is our heart, and then we can reflect more of God's light. Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always in love. Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always in love. Hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu. Hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu. Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always in love. Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always in love. Hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu. Hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu Allah, Allah, hu. Today is the first Sunday of the year, but it's also the first Sunday of the month, and that makes it Communion Sunday. A perfect ritual and metaphor for Epiphany, and also for the start of this new year that comes on the back of such an intense year. We're in the 12 holy nights. They are the days or the nights between the birth of Jesus and the arrival of the Magi, the wise ones who came from the east, bringing gifts, but also bringing their own gifts. And today at my other church, which is Unity of Port Townsend, that I tried to get this day off, and they said, no, you can't have today off. I know you've got communion to do, but it's the burning bowl. And Unity churches all over the world do a special ritual on the first Sunday of the year called the Burning Bowl. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Unity are, first of all. So they started... The founders were a couple called Myrtle and Charles Fillmore. Myrtle, I know more about her. She was born in 1845. And she was very ill, I think, with tuberculosis. And she prayed to an icon of Jesus and received tremendous healing. And then she and her husband Charles developed a way of praying and opened a prayer group that then, over time, grew into a Christian church, New Thought Church, called Unity. They're very open-minded, very prayer-focused, and they look at the Bible from a metaphysical perspective. Now, I have never actually known what metaphysical meant, so last night I looked it up, and basically it's looking within something beyond rational reason, so looking at symbolic meaning and hidden meaning in a story. So they don't take the Bible literally. And the burning bowl ritual is one in which they, through meditation, focus on a burden that they want to release. They write it on a piece of paper, and then together they go up and they burn it at the front of the church. And then they come back, and into that spaciousness that has been created, they pray for insight of a word or an action for them to do in the coming year that will bring them closer to the Christ light. Now, I want you to know that I'm not a Unity minister, and I've never picked up a Unity book or studied with them. It's a tradition that I love, but it's not my own tradition, so I haven't done learning there. But for the last 5 or 6 years I've been worshipping and leading music with Unity churches all over the peninsula. So I've learned a lot from them. And one of the things that is not a coincidence is that they do the burning bowl during Epiphany. So for people who are not religious, it makes sense. It's the start of a new year. But from a spiritual point of view, there's a special blessing that's there in the 12 days of Christmas. So if you look at it metaphysically, I went and I did a little bit of research about a metaphysical understanding of the three kings. So supposedly they represent the inner realms of consciousness. They are the records of our intuition and past knowledge that we bring to the great day when the soul receives Jesus, the supreme ego. That's a metaphysical understanding of the three kings. Another different Christian tradition is Rudolf Steiner's Anthroposophy, and this is a really important time in the Steiner tradition. Steiner says that between Christmas and the arrival of Epiphany, the angels circle the globe, and those with open hearts are able to hear God's wisdom speaking to them. Remember, angels represent communication from God to us. It's also a time in which, in the Steiner tradition, they also look back on the year and look forward to the year that will come. So as I said today, Unity churches all over the world are casting off their burdens so that they can have empty hands to receive the divinity of Christ. Of course, they would call it the Christ consciousness, but language isn't important here. What we're talking about is the divine light held inside every human being, the blueprint of God that we can and do grow into when we see that face reflected in another. I personally think it's wrong to say that Jesus is the only face that models this divinity. I say this because I've met Buddhist nuns and pregnant working class teenagers. And the teenagers in particular hadn't got any spiritual guidance, and they hadn't received very much human kindness, but they understood love and truth. They were able to recognize God's face, even though they didn't know anything about Christianity. Whether you think Christ is the only face of God or not is up to you. Please don't take my word for it. I hope that we all can use our own discernment here. Back to Epiphany. So today, in the Christian year, we're journeying with the wise men and women, the traditions that we've inherited, and we're going to meet God who is among us. And it's Epiphany. I like to think about this because we know the story so well, but think about it from the point of view of the Magi, the wise ones. They went to Herod. They saw this. They made sense of what their tradition had taught them. Their intuition told them to go and meet God who would be among the people. So they went to the powerful. They went to the King Herod, which of course we know created a whole other story. Sent King Herod trying to get rid of the baby. They had no idea it would be a baby born to a teenage, disempowered Mary. And I like to think about what it must have been like for them when they had that aha moment. Oh, this isn't what we expected. And there's something really important about us receiving God and letting go of our preconceived ideas. There's something about unknowing and openness that if you don't have that, you won't meet the baby. I believe that you don't receive epiphany moments or the grace of God if you are certain on your beliefs. In the Magnificat around Christmas time, I talked a lot about how the this light that's coming is not for the powerful, it's not for the righteous, it's not for the people who think that they're it, right? You know, that they move and everything's going right. It's really for people who are humble and broken and open. There's something so important about us letting our guard down, dismantling our beliefs, and being open in a vulnerable way. If a baby doesn't symbolize a vulnerable God, I don't know what does. So the whole point of the burning bowl, and for me, Epiphany, it's a time of reorientating our life, tidying up the distractions, you know, letting go of King Herod and refocusing and finding our way again so that we can meet God afresh and receive the new that we don't even know what it is yet. And the burning bowl is in two parts. One is a letting go and the other one is a receiving. And I thought about doing this with you today, but I was like, we don't need to because we've got communion. We've got our own traditions, our own richness. So if we look at communion, if we really look at it, so much of it is about releasing burdens, making space within ourselves, and receiving the grace of God. Matthew 11 says this, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Communion, or Eucharist, or whatever you call it, is a ritual in which we make space within our free will to align with and receive Christ's life through our body. Now, traditionally, if you look at the components of communion, which I never did until I was a minister because it was still mystery. I don't need to know all the components, but there are certain things in communion, especially in the Episcopal or Orthodox or the Catholic tradition. There are very specific components that make up communion, and one of them is a prayer of confession. Back in Scotland, we would say this. Actually, before I get there, I'm using the word Lord a lot today. I know some of you don't like that word. And if I could replace it easily, I would. Perhaps you could translate it as divine power. It's definitely not a masculine thing. So if the word Lord makes you cringe, please accept my apologies today. So here's a typical prayer of confession. "Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say a word and I shall be healed." So there's a prayer of confession. But it's not just that. It's also, so it's about letting go of the burdens and the ways that we stop ourselves from sharing that light. The ways that we are unkind to ourselves and each other. And then the second part of it is magnifying the holy name. And I love that image of a magnifying glass because it doesn't create the light, it just focuses it and strengthens it. And in communion, we are magnifying the blueprint of God that is concealed and held within us. It's an important spiritual practice of cleaning the mirror of our heart and letting the light in us shine out in the world. That's why it's such a huge part of the Christian tradition. It's a way in which we can access more of our divinity. But I have to say there's also another side to it. Richard Rohr says if you don't transform your suffering, you will transfer it. So this psychological housekeeping is essential. Our prayer work around communion and our shadow work and our making space within us and dismantling what people I think traditionally would call sin, where they're missing the mark. We have to do that because if we don't do that work, we will unconsciously transfer our suffering on to future generations and the ones that we love the most. And going back to that Rumi poem, stop acting so small. Don't you know who you are? You are a manuscript of a divine letter. You are a mirror reflecting a noble face. The universe is not outside of you. When we take away all that is wrong, our regrets, our mistakes, and all the things that blot out the light, we stand in humility and we find a place of prayer and peace in which we can meet God. So let me ask you something. Is there something that you need to release and not carry into this new year? Is there a burden you carry with you everywhere you go? Something that's not serving you? Something that's weighing you down? Or perhaps there's a story that defines you that you don't want to define you. Let us not be tethered to the past. Christ, Prince of Peace, one who reveals how to love God, be in us, in our thoughts, in our healing. Unlock our potential, open us to wholeness so that we may know ourselves as you know us. Stop acting so small. You are the light of the world.